Good evening. Welcome to Two Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Thank you for joining. It's another tariff day. Little bit of news elsewhere, but mostly we're going to spend the hour talking more about tariffs. Two great guests, Hogan Gidley, former White House Deputy Press Secretary and advisor to all sorts of people in the MAGA orbit, including Speaker Johnson, and Sarah Bianchi, former Deputy U.S. Trade Representative in the Biden administration and an expert on all things financial, economic, and tariffy. They'll be here shortly. We've got a bunch of sound bites from the president and others to walk you through the day. Markets were down, but not as much as they were the previous 2 days. Very volatile on the markets, including some volatility caused by a false news report, which we'll talk about in just a moment. It's another example of why the markets make me batty. The president talked at great length today in the photo op. Press conference was canceled. We'll talk about that, about his general orientation towards why the tariffs and not backing down. And the world kind of dealt with that. Elon Musk, number 7, please. Elon Musk continues to not appear to be publicly supportive of the tariffs, confusing some people. There's the Wall Street Journal headline. Elon Musk knocks Trump's trade philosophy. Musk's comments reveal tension within the administration over the president's trade agenda. That's kind of interesting. And before we go back to tariffs, two other bits of news. First of all, or maybe three bits of news. How about that? First of all, the president announced today, this would be number 10, Ian. The president announced today that there have been secret direct talks with Iran about their nuclear program, and that there'll be a big meeting this weekend where the topic of how to settle the long-running impasse will be addressed. Number 10, please.
Having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly, that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. So we're going to see if we can avoid it. But it's getting to be very dangerous territory. And hopefully those talks will be successful. And I think it would be in Iran's best interest if they are successful. We hope that's going to happen.
So we'll judge the president by the results, whether it's the Middle East or Iran or Russia. But once again, there's a big difference between Donald Trump and his predecessor, which is he's willing to talk to anybody. He makes that clear. He'll talk to the Iranians. The Biden administration did not in the main, certainly not direct talks with Iran, and same with Putin. And we'll see if the direct talks yield anything. Okay, number 11. Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts, Chief Justice of the United States, I should say, temporarily blocked the order to return that now very famous Maryland dad migrant deported to El Salvador in error until the Supreme Court stepped in. There was a deadline for midnight tonight by a district court judge to bring him back. The administration is suggesting that's not as easy as the judge makes it sound. So the Supreme Court has given the administration more time. And then finally, before we go back to tariffs, the greatest baseball player of his era, Mr. Ohtani, and his World Championship Dodgers were at the White House today, and he got some quality time with the president. Roll tape.
Boy, oh boy, what an athlete.
And 3, 2, 1.
You know what you do? And for your family. This is so great to have you. It's a great honor. You're an amazing athlete in person. Have a good time. Take a picture by the Declaration of Independence. It's great. That's a good one.
3, 2, 1.
Domo arigato gozaimashita. Love that photo op. All right, back to tariffs. If you want to be in on the conversation, you can ask about other stuff, but I prefer you ask for tariffs. And I'd like to hear tonight if you voted for Donald Trump 1, 2, 3 times, if you're generally a Trump supporter and you're against the tariffs or have trepidation about the tariffs, I want to hear from you tonight. So if that fits you when we get to raising hands, I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs up if you're a Trump supporter in general, but you're skittish about the tariffs or opposed to the tariffs. I want to hear from folks like that tonight. Anybody, though, obviously can be in on the conversation. We've got two great guests, honored and privileged to have them both. So please, if you're here on the two-way platform, raise your hand. As always, whether you're on two-way, X, or YouTube, please extend the presumption of grace to all. Peace, love, and understanding is the ethos of the platform. It should be the ethos not just of what you say if you raise your hand to ask a question, but if you go in the chat. Because if you put smack in the chat, you're violating all our principles, and we don't want you to do that. Many of you still do, despite my admonitions. Please don't. In any event, we're going to play a little bit of sound from the president. But before we do that, we'll bring in our outstanding guest. Mr. Hogan Gidley of the United States of America is a former White House official and currently an advisor. Who are you advising these days besides Speaker Johnson? Who's officially someone you can publicly identify as someone you advise?
I can't publicly identify anybody else that I advise.
Oh, okay, but Speaker Johnson, you can't run or hide from that because
you cannot.
We see you all the time on the Hill. And Sarah Bianchi, as I said, worked in the trade office in the Biden administration and worked with Al Gore and many other Democrats, and now works for Evercore. What's it called? Evercore something. Partners? What's it called? Inc. It's got some other word.
ISI, yeah.
ISI?
ISI.
What does that stand for?
It's a part of Evercore.
Evercore ISI. All right. Well, welcome to you both. I want to just get, before we play some sound from the president, I want to get like your 80,000 foot view of where things are. Sarah, how would you describe to someone who was like in a coma for the last week, how would you describe where we are in the world economy regarding the tariffs right now? Is it a crisis? Is it a controversy?
Well, I think
what is it?
Oh, well, look, I think a lot of people who are observers of the economy think that this level and this amount of tariff adding to the system will be a huge shock. I think even one of the complexities of we were, just in January, our average weighted tariff into the United States, all countries, all products, was 3%. Under the president's proposal, we are already at 24, on track for 27 based on investigations. That's just a huge, huge disruption to the economy, even if you share some of the president's goals. I think one of the complicating factors of this is trying to really understand what President Trump is solving for. I think reshoring is an admirable goal. Some level of fairness is an admirable goal. Maybe revenue, but I think what the markets and the economy, well, the markets now and the economy tomorrow are reacting to is just a huge, policy shock of untold proportions that are going to have implications that we are only just beginning to understand.
All right, so it's a shock. Is it a crisis where we are now, or not? Not necessarily.
I think that it depends how long we stay here. It depends how quick we see off ramps. I think this amount of tariff this fast, even if you supported the goals, will lead to most economists would say, or it's going to lead to a significant downturn, if not a recession. So I think CEOs are frozen and acting. I think we're going to see hiring in the real economy. So right now it's just presenting in the stock market. He certainly has time to pivot if he wants to. But if this stays on track, we will be headed for an economic crisis, in my opinion.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Hogan, how is it going for the president since Wednesday's announcement, would you say, as compared to what they planned? And thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. And Sarah, it's good to be on with you. And I just want it duly noted that Sarah may not know this, but I'm very steeped in policy. So I'm looking forward to have a really in-depth conversation about the
we
markets.
Can talk about 232s.
All that. That's all in my wheelhouse, of course. Obviously, I'm not a policy person. However, I don't think as of right now, they're surprised by this at all, because I think he ran on this, he won on this. How quickly it corrects what he's trying to correct, I think is important. Sarah's right about that. I think the American people understand fixing a perceived problem that has dogged this country now for decades, hurt our manufacturing sector and so many other goods and services. It's going to take some time. That's kind of baked into the decision. Look, I do think the American people, while patient to some degree, aren't going to be too patient if this persists. Now, Donald Trump, as you have seen, Mark, and many have reported, typically when a bad headline pops around, you'll see some kind of change or some kind of movement. That's not what has happened here. Donald Trump said, no, this is what I wanted to do. I got 4 years to enact the policies I want enacted, the policies the American people voted for. This will be some level of pain because you're shocking a system that has been, kind of tailor-made against American interests for so long. It's going to take a minute to get it back. You do already, however, see a lot of countries coming to the table. The White House says 70 countries. You saw the EU say a 0-for-0 tariff. They're happy to do that. So the desired effect of maybe getting these trade imbalances back to level may be working already, depending on whether or not he already rejected that first offer. So we'll see what happens. But I think all the things he talked about, being the world's piggy bank, being a country that pays for all these other countries' goods, they don't pay us. I mean, he's been talking about these things since the 80s when he was writing op-eds for the New York Times and on Oprah and all these things. So this is all kind of who he is, and it's kind of at his core. It's just, it's got to work because the American people are going to be facing a midterm election pretty soon. And most people on the right, most people who voted for Donald Trump wanted disruption. I think 83% of Americans wanted massive disruption. They got it as far as the world economy is concerned. So we'll see what happens.
All right, we're going to play a soundbite, but Hogan, just a quick credibility check. These are your two choices. Is it going well so far or not well?
Well, that depends on many factors.
Well, overall, from the point of view of the president's policy and political health, is it going well?
I think it's going exactly like they want it to go so far.
Okay.
In so much as change is coming.
Okay. Let's play this question of off-ramps. Everybody I talked to this weekend, and I bet Sarah too, was like, well, by the weekend or maybe by Monday or Tuesday, there's going to be some number. This is going to be number 5, Ian. There's going to be some deals, and those deals will beget more deals, and members of Congress will say, Mr. President, start making deals. So far, there's talk of deals, sort of, but not necessarily. So let's play number 5, please. This is the president in the Oval.
Into a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiation.
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many, many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals. And in certain cases, they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. They'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan. And they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking. So we have a great relationship with Japan. We're going to keep it that way, but they're coming in to meet, and other countries are coming in. With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China, but they can't do this. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed what they've done to us.
As the president said, there is an agreement to talk to Japanese, so it's amongst the first negotiations that's underway. I had been led to believe all winter and early spring that they did not want a confrontation with China until the fall, that was going to be deferred until later. They've got now a big confrontation with China. So obviously every country in the world is affected here, but China is singular in its place in America's conception of trade. So Sarah, what impact will this China tariff situation have on the overall world economy?
Well, we don't export a ton to China. Maybe that's part of the president's point. It's really only, I think, going to hit about 7% of exports. So I think that's sustainable. And I quite frankly don't blame the president for focusing on China. I think there are a lot of challenges there. I think a bigger question is whether you should be taking on everybody else or trying to make everybody else a friend so that you can take on China because they're causing a lot of damage to the economy. I think a lot of people think we're going to drive other countries into the hands of China with this approach. I actually didn't expect a deal from the president today. I thought he sounded pretty confident last night. I think the real question is, to Hogan's point, like if you can just take your tariffs off, which is right now they're not accepting, that's fine. That's not the problem he's identified. In Vietnam, as an example, the tariff rate alone is 5%.
Right.
The Trump identified problem leads you to a 46% tariff.
Right.
Some of those problems, and I don't, is that in their mind is China bank shutting through Vietnam. That's not something really Vietnam can solve for. So I don't see a deal. So I think the question is, what's he going to take? Is he really going to hold out to restructure the economy? Does he really hope that we're going to make Nike here? I don't know, but that's the question is, let me take a step back. If you, Mark, believed that we absolutely as a country should not be in NAFTA, you would not sign USMCA. They're not that different. So the question is, that was a big problem he identified, and the solution had changed, but not that he's satisfied with. Now that he's back, he's all over those countries. So are we going to see the transformative change that he's identified, or are we going to see cosmetic fixes like we saw from NAFTA to USMCA, in which case
Right.
the off-ramp's not that complicated?
Right. Where he declared victory, even though, as you said, it was really not that big a difference from what he inherited. Hogan, are you friends with Elon Musk? You guys buddies?
I've talked to him before on a few occasions. We're not
Okay.
buddies.
Okay. So in a
I
normal
have an X account.
there you go. Do you pay for you have one of those premium things you pay for?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. In a normal administration, someone as senior as Elon Musk would not be on social media criticizing the central plank of the administration's policy. So how do you explain what he's doing and what are the implications of it?
Well, first of all, I don't know. Is he technically in the government?
Well,
Kinda like an
he's a
outs-
special government employee and he sits in the Oval Office with the president every day and he's the face of the administration on one of its other main policies. So yeah, I'd say
Well, he
he's
sat
kind
at
of in the government.
Mar-a-Lago every night too, but he's not
Yeah.
co-owner of that place. So
All right. He's associated closely with the president and his policies. So how do you explain what he's doing and what are the implications of it?
interestingly enough, I think this kind of goes into another interesting kind of situation with Trump world, because so often he's criticized for being someone who just wants sycophants around him all the time, which of course anybody who works with him on a consistent basis realizes that's not the case. He likes the headbutting. He
Yeah.
wants to kind of see the iron sharpen iron to
Yeah.
find out the best direction to go in. And so when stories are coming out, whether true or not, of some arguments in the Oval Office or Elon being on the side of something, yeah, that tracks with what I've seen in my 4 years there, because that's what Donald Trump likes to do. So someone like Elon with that bully pulpit, with that entire social media platform, it's significant. But I mean, these kinds of things are going to be happening. Elon's
Hogan,
focused.
I got to stop because this is, with respect, this is gobbledygook. What is a senior Trump advisor doing criticizing the policy? Like, shouldn't he keep his mouth shut?
I mean, look, he's a grown man with his own company. He's out.
Well,
he doesn't work. He's an SGE.
But if Scott Bessent came out and started posting stuff on X,
It's different. He's a cabinet secretary. It's
well,
different.
so you say he can do whatever, he can be as critical as he wants, no problem.
I didn't
because-
say he can be as critical as he wants, no problem. What I
Yeah.
said was right now they've got that kind of relationship where the give and take goes. How it ends up looking publicly, a whole nother thing. Look, all of this stuff could come crashing down at any moment, but it could also go, like a rocket ship, like an Elon rocket ship through the stratosphere as well. So is it a good look? I mean, whatever, man. This is Trump world. He likes seeing a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff in
All right.
public.
All right. Again, we're going to get to you a little bit early
That
tonight because
wasn't gobbledygook, by the way. That was a
I
well
said
articulated answer.
I said respectfully. Respectfully, I felt it was gobbledygook. Um,
Respectfully, you were wrong.
Raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. I want to get lots of you in because we have two great experts here, and I want people to weigh in on tariffs. But I want to ask about this media story, which is also a market story, number 9. So the market opened, went down a lot, and then it came back up. Part of the volatility, you see the headline here, how an aired headline about a tariff pause briefly sent stocks soaring. Stocks soaring. So Kevin Hassett, who this morning on the morning meeting, some of my colleagues said, my colleagues Sean and Dan said, and some of the community members said they thought Kevin was like the best spokesperson. He's the head of the National Economic Council, a longtime policy hand, very smart guy. He went on TV this morning and was asked, "Is it this recommendation from Bill Ackman, 90-day pause?" He was asked, like, "Is the president open to a 90-day pause?" And the first word out of his mouth was, I think, yes, but clearly his answer was not yes. He said basically it's up to the president. So he didn't say it, but somehow CNBC and Reuters then ran stories saying Trump opened to 90-day pause. And the markets, of course, that's what they dream about. They want a 90-day pause. So the markets went up, and then it was debunked by Sean Hogan's friend, Caroline Levitt. And so the market came back down. Not as much down. So it got a little buoyancy. Sarah, these people who trade, they got a lot on the line. They're not idiots. Why are they trading based on a false headline?
Well, I thought the whole thing was curious because I really didn't think, I mean, he did say the yes, but it was almost like that kind of, well, it was like a yeah,
Yeah.
I think the headline maybe came across Bloomberg and just said it. People had heard Ackman was pushing that idea. By the way, I think the idea would be really unhelpful because one of the problems right now is uncertainty
Right.
for the
90 days,
CEOs
consigning us to 90 days of
to
uncertainty.
think about whether this is going to
Yeah.
happen. Like nobody's going to
Yeah.
hire anybody. So I hope that's not the off ramp I would be looking for.
Yeah.
But I thought I was very curious. I think the market's just really trying to grasp at tea leaves. They're not fully comprehending what Trump is doing, and so they're just they're all worried about kind of getting their face ripped off in the markets, which many of them are.
Hogan.
I think what you're trying to imply, if I'm hearing your snark properly, is that they did that on purpose to try and show the president that if he got rid of tariffs for a little bit, the stock market would go up. Thus, he would change his policy.
I'm not implying that, although it's an interesting theory. I'm just trying to figure out like what kind of world we live in where like the guy could be characterized saying something he didn't say and the markets could just go crazy. I'm not being snarky at all. I'm really just sort of interested
I think
in
it
what
just
happened.
popped across Bloomberg.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of volatility in the market.
People just
People
jump
are
on it.
very, very stressed right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people have hedges on that if it goes below a certain amount, it pops.
Right.
Like it was like a lot of electronic trading.
Right.
I think it got sorted pretty quick in the market.
Are you asking me, a Republican who's been doing comms now for 25 years in this industry, why a media outlet would take something someone said
here's what I'm asking.
Report the opposite?
No, here's what I'm asking. Here's what I'm asking.
Idea.
Here's what I'm asking you. Within the White House, Caroline responded pretty quickly, but we've seen mixed messages on the messaging across the board. Why would I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just asking you to explain to a lay audience why would the White House be so interested in snuffing out that story?
Well, if it wasn't true, why would they not? Why would they want it to permeate? Right?
Okay. All right.
I mean, if he's trying to make deals with other countries, and the other countries are under the illusion that we're going to stop this thing for 90 days, that changes the trajectory of these 70 countries that are dying to meet with the administration, quote unquote. So if that's happening, why wouldn't they want to? You're taking a leverage point off the table. So they'd want to stop that.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. If you've got your hand up, raise your physical hand if you voted for Trump in 24, but you're skeptical or adverse to the tariffs. Okay. So I see Dean and Patty, and Tim's a little iffy. Dustin. Okay. All right. Let's just start with Dean. Dean, tell folks what's on your mind and start, if you would. First, tell people after you unmute where you are who don't know. Then start with why you're unhappy with the tariffs or worried about the tariffs. Go ahead. You're good, Dean. Go ahead. You're unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry. It still
That's right.
it's still on my screen. I missed the first question, Mark.
Where are you? If some folks don't know, and then why are you tell your Trump voting history, and then why you're worried about the tariffs or confused or whatever it is.
Yeah. So Dean in Northeast Ohio. I'm about an hour south of Cleveland. If you're a football fan, I'm in Canton, Ohio, Pro Football Hall of Fame. I voted for the president 3 times, for Hillary, for when he went against Biden, and the last time. I am in this man's corner, but I don't know what the hell is going on right now. I go to, and look, not the smartest tool in the shed, but when Ben Shapiro, when Bill Ackman, when Sean Hannity starts questioning in ways that make me nervous, then I start to think, what the heck is going on? Is the president playing some type of 3D or 4D chess game? This this shouldn't be as hard as he is making it. If he would have told me that the stock market was going to go down as much as it was going to go down before it happened, I would have given him a little bit of grace. This fact of him coming in at the last minute, it's gonna be a little bit hard for a little bit. That's number one that is just driving me nuts. The second thing is these small handful of administration people, Lutnick, I'm going to get the names wrong, and Navarro, I'm done with those guys. They can't get their act together. They can't get their story straight. And that is, again, I support the president. I love what he's doing with the border. I love everything he could give a heads up to the American people and get us on board here.
Okay, let's let Hogan respond to that. Hogan.
No, I mean, look, I think a lot of people wanted Donald Trump to come in and be that disruptor, make these changes. The problem is a lot of these changes could be painful for a while. And I would argue Donald Trump did say you could have some pain for a while. Now, if you want him to explain it more, Dean, I get that. I mean, most people out here listening to these politicians would love a better explanation or a longer explanation. But I think Donald Trump said, look, there's going to be some pain, but this is going to bring our jobs back, and it's going to make us on free and fair ground, because every politician I know, I'm sure everyone you have ever listened to, says they want free and fair trade. Well, the free trade's always there. The fair trade never follows. And Trump says, I'm going to make that happen. But the course correct, it's going to cost some money. It's going to take some time, but we're going to come back bigger and better. He's basically been saying that. So have all the other people you're talking about. So, I mean, and honestly, I'm not being dismissive. Like, what would you like an Oval Office address? Would you like a sit down interview just about tariffs? Like, what would you like? Because I mean, I may or may not know some people that could potentially make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to see him sit down with Ben Shapiro, with Bill Ackman, and get those guys on board. Heck, get Elon back on board for that particular strategy.
I heard Ben this morning. I listened to Ben's podcast from last week on Friday when he talked about tariffs. So I'm with you. I heard it this morning.
Yeah, just pick one. If we can understand the goals and the triggers that are going to happen, Hogan, I'd be happy with some healthy pushback from the Speaker of the House. I mean, everyone just seems to be rolling over a little bit. Not everyone. I mean, I know that there are some that are speaking, but hey, the good news for the right side. Sorry.
What? Oh, her vest.
Nope. Hold on. Sorry, we got a mic open somewhere.
No, that's fine.
Keep going.
The good news, Hogan, for the right side of the aisle is the left side is screwed up so much. These books are coming out on how. I wanted to ask Ms. Bianchi. I said, if you were in the administration over this last 6 months, what would you have done to stay out of the to do right by the American people? If you got time, you can answer that, Sarah. But I give the president his due. I give him a long. I'm nobody. But I'm happy to give him. I like what I'm seeing and everything else. This one just is a confusing miss for me so far.
Okay, Dean, thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, well, look, I think the president, some of the goals are right on. Okay, there are supply chains that are a security risk. We need to have more of them in the United States. or at least with allies. I support that. I do think we need to be very, very hard line with China. They overproduce and then they export and flood markets and cause all kinds of damage. So 100%. I think in my own mind, the best way to get reshoring to happen is not, for a pharmaceutical to build in the US. I don't think a tariff quite is going to get you there. I thought more the CHIPS Investment Act, try to get semis. I think you do need some incentives, some carrots along with that. But I guess I would be more interested in a strategy that was a little bit more China focused and reshoring focused and didn't have all the other components that I think are just some industries that we don't really. I saw Mr. Lutnick on TV last night saying we could all push pins into iPhones and that's going to make America great again. First of all, that stuff's probably already automated. If not, it's on its way. So I question, I don't think necessarily people want to make, t-shirts or grow bananas here. So I just think it should be more strategically focused. And
Sarah, can I ask you then, sorry, one follow-up. So the two strategies that I hear are, one, tariffs are revenue generation for our country. Two, they're a way to get other countries to remove the tariff and take it down to zero. Which camp are you in? Take the tariffs on both sides down to zero, free trade for everyone, or do you see it more as a revenue generation for the country?
I think I think if you're just doing it for revenue, you're probably going to hit too many middle-class people with higher costs. So I do not believe that it is the most efficient way to get more revenue into the government. I think there's other spending cuts and other ways to go about that. I'm more supportive of the reshoring strategy and the contain China strategy. The interesting thing about getting everyone's tariffs to zero, I'm totally fine with that. If we do that on trucks, we're going to have a big problem because we have really high tariffs coming on trucks in this country, which is why we have an SUV and truck market that is as robust as it is. So we should be careful. But I also want to make this point again, even if Vietnam takes its tariff rate from 5% to zero, Trump has him at 46 because there's a lot of other structural things he's trying to fix. And I'm not sure we're going to get all that done. I think he should focus on a couple different places where he wants to make a difference and not try to boil the ocean.
Dean, thank you.
I'm struggling with that new map too. Thank you, Mark.
Grateful, Dean. Thank you. Hogan, what is the speaker doing to balance the interests of his conference and his constituents with the president's plan?
Well, first things first, I do not speak on behalf of Mike Johnson. I just am up around the house sometimes. Everyone needs to know that because I don't want this attributed to him. But in the vein of the journalist I used to be, attribution is your salvation. So Mike Johnson has said on countless occasions to let this thing cook for a minute, give him the runway. He was president before. We had a record-setting global economy. America was doing better than it had ever done in our nation's history economically. So Donald Trump knows this stuff. He understands this stuff. And while he's doing things a bit differently, he's shaking things up a little bit more this time than he was last time. Johnson's been pretty clear. Guys, let this go because Trump, give some faith to Donald Trump because he deserves it and he's earned it.
Yep. Breaking story on Politico. I don't know if it's true, but I can tell you that it will reassure markets. It broke after the markets closed. And if it broke during the markets, I think it would have actually moved the markets, whether or not it's true. But it's probably true. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is someone who the establishment, the bankers, the investors, etc., have been looking to say, this guy knows better than to start a trade war. And so Politico is reporting that the Secretary of Treasury flew to Florida on Sunday to encourage President Trump to focus his message on negotiating favorable trade deals or risk the stock market cratering further. Bessent told Trump that markets would remain in peril unless he started putting more emphasis on talking about his end game with tariffs, winning deals with other countries. So that was discussed today. publicly in various ways. Still the good cop, bad cop messaging. But clearly, and Bessent himself did this in announcing a framework of a discussion with the Japanese. Clearly, if this trend continues and it resolves things, Bessent will be seen as a hero by many and playing the role, as I said, that many people had wanted him to play. Hogan, why are you rolling your eyes and smiling at that?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I was smirking because, whether it's a Chinese spy balloon that goes across the country or a stock market tumble, you got to leave it to South Carolinians to take care of the whole thing, right? They come in and calm everything and fix everything.
To be fair, the man owns a lot of houses, one in South Carolina, maybe two, but he's not. I don't know that he's strictly South Carolina, although he has lived in South Carolina recently. So you're right. All right, Patty, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, your Trump voting record, and why the tariffs are troubling to you.
I have been a voting Democrat since Obama. This election, I couldn't, I'm in Southwest Michigan, but this election, I couldn't vote for Kamala Harris. And I took a step back and I thought I want to look at everything. And I really looked into Trump. I looked into the message. I looked into what people were concerned about, and I made the decision to vote for him. And I went kind of gladly voting for him because I was kind of convinced that he had policies and things that I felt were that were good. What concerns me, and what has, I think, people that have come over may have the same concerns, is the bluster, the rhetoric. It can get to be scary, especially in a time like this, and it muddies the message. For a comms group that does a superb job, Carolyn Levitt, etc., he is his own worst enemy. He steps on his own message so many times, in my opinion, by bluster, and the kind of commentary that he presents doesn't engender confidence from my perspective.
Yeah.
And my fear is that if he could just take, much like you did, Sarah, say, look, China is a big issue. Here are the issues. Here is what's going on. This is why tariffs, etc. You know the message better than I do. If there was just some way to give a step-by-step, this is what I'm trying to do. I don't expect him to give away his game plan. But when he goes in mad at everybody, and I mean, I've negotiated things. You don't go in being angry at the person. You go in maybe internally knowing what the cards are you want to play, but you don't go in with just kind of an anger and putting everybody down.
Yeah, Patty, let me
inspire confidence. I'm having a problem.
Let me let Sarah and then Hogan respond to that, because it's a great point. We're all used to Donald Trump's blustering style. Sarah, are the markets in this case not forgiving of that because the stakes are too high and the issue's too sensitive?
I mean, Trump does use that negotiating style, and we all should be accustomed to it. But when even though I don't always, it's not my style, but he has literally effectuated by executive action, taking our tariff rate from 3% to 25% in a matter of 3 weeks. I think the market has to look at the economic impact of what that means for companies. I mean, Nike sends everything from Vietnam. So it's a big deal. The auto industry is all separated throughout.
Better than shoes, in my opinion, but yes.
Yeah, go buy Nike today. It's all integrated. They cannot untangle that fast. And so the market, they want to know where he's going to land, but they can see the seriousness that Hogan's talking about. And even if I'm right and he lands back at somewhere in 15th, that's like unlike anything we've seen in 100 years in this country. So you have to look at the economic, especially of all at once. It's as a big a shock to the system, as COVID shutting down or something like that. So I think the market's right to respond, even if they believe that there's a fallback.
Hogan, you are, like most people who have sustained time around Donald Trump, you're a let Trump be Trump person. So I know you're not going to say he should change his style fundamentally, but Would it be better, as Patty's suggesting, if he were a little bit more deliberative and clear in his explanations? Or
I mean, look, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. You can't if your way. If Donald Trump would just do this, but if he would say that's not how it works. I mean, look, as Sarah's pointed out, this is a change that is decades in the off. I mean, this is something that's been coming or roiling for a long time. And you like Donald Trump's policies, I get it, or some of them anyway. You can't have the policy without the personality. That's just who he is. And if I had $1 for every time in the first administration, if they said, if you would just the tweeting, and they said, could you tell him not to tweet? I'm like, well, there's a good idea. Let me think. Let me see if I could get him not to tweet. Like, it's just not how it works. So you got to have to, with any politician I've worked with, any office holder, you let them be who they are as best they can and work to shape it as best you can on the back end. And, Trump's the biggest turnout machine on both sides of the aisle I've ever seen in my life, just naturally. Yeah. And that's in large part because of the way he talks. Some like it, some don't. But, I can't change that.
Patty, thank you. Again, want to get one more Trump voter who's uncomfortable with the tariffs. If you've got your hand up and you're fit that category, please raise your physical hand. Got your hand up, raise your physical hand. Okay. All right, let's get Yakov in. Yakov, tell everybody where you are, your history of voting with Trump, and why the tariffs are making you uncomfortable.
Hi, I voted for Trump all 3 times. And my only question is, don't you think Trump should have passed a tax plan first and then do the tariffs? That's my only...
Yeah, okay. Tell us why you think that would have been better.
Because the main thing that Trump got elected was jobs. And you want to codify laws, policies into law, like President Carter did when he deregulated the airfare, and when he deregulated trucking, tri-state trucking, and we let people brew their own beer. You want to codify things into law. So that is what solidifies your legacy. And that's what people voted for, to have great jobs and to solidify the economy. And once you get that win, then you go for the bang for these tariffs.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Hogan, why not reverse the order?
Well, I mean, again, this is kind of the way he wanted to do it, but I'll tell you this, Yakov, because having done some stuff over at the House side, he wants this one big, beautiful bill. And he wants everything in it, from energy to border stuff to defense to economic, the tax cuts, et cetera. It's going to take a minute to get all that done. And remember, Trump's operating on a very condensed time frame here, also understanding that the midterms are coming up. So if he waited for this bill to pass, who knows where we'd be by the time it actually passed, probably the end of the year, because you have to wait until the Trump tax cuts expired. Now it kind of has the reverse effect. I think some members are feeling pressure because a lot of the economists are saying, wait a minute, if you put those tax cuts and codify those, so they don't run out, if you do some of the energy exploration and remove some of the regulation in the bill, it calms the markets, it calms fears, and it could settle the stocks. If that's the case, then there's pressure on House members who are still kind of unsure about a big, beautiful bill, et cetera. It's too big or it's too much, or they don't like, they don't get everything they want. It forces them to the table to try and have that conversation and vote the way Trump wants them to vote to get that bill as well. And theoretically, he'd have 2 of the most massive cultural, global things done in like the first 6 months of his presidency, when you include the tariffs and then this one big, beautiful bill.
Sarah, you've been involved in lots of legislative strategizing. What do you think of the sequencing?
Well, I agree with Hogan that's why I did it, because the tax one takes too long. But last time he did the reverse order, and I think it gave him a lot more bandwidth to deal with the tariffs. I also think we're in a different environment, and I have a sinking feeling that that this is going to be inflationary. And I can tell you, in case nobody remembered the last elections, voters have very little patience for inflation, especially a self-inflicted inflation. So I think he is going to live to regret it. The only other point I'd make to Hogan's thing is the tax cut right now is largely just extending current law. So it's
Correct.
not that many things that we have to look forward to in it. It's really just an assumption. So it is an accomplishment. I agree. And I see in the chat that some people think tariffs aren't inflationary. We'll all see. We'll all see.
Well,
And
let's hope we
but
don't.
let's
Let's hope
hope
we
we
don't
don't.
see it.
But lots of, we'll see. But I think I understand the ordering. I understand the urgency. Although all of this stuff is executive action, so it doesn't really matter if he loses the House. But anyway, but I think
Sure.
economically it will prove to be a challenge.
Jakob, thank you. Grateful to you. So I forgot, Scott Bessent hasn't just been hanging out in South Carolina. Unlike Hogan, he's a native South Carolinian. He's a native. He was born in South Carolina. Thank you, Noah, for reminding me of that. I knew that, but somehow I'd forgotten. All right, Calvin, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind regarding
Speaking of
tariffs.
South Carolina,
I'm in Sumter, South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And by the way, Ben Bernanke's from Dillon, South Carolina.
That's right.
that's right, around the border,
We South Carolinians we know the money, I guess. And
south of the border.
on that point, I'm a financial advisor, so I've had an interesting 3 days, for sure.
What kind of business or clients do you have?
I would say mostly retail clients, so it's going to be your average American. So I had a lot of contact with average Americans that are concerned.
I bet. What kind of questions have they been asking you?
It's not really questions. It's more just concern. Let's say in South Carolina, the majority of our people here are Trump supporters pretty heavily, right? Our county does have a decent amount of blue voters too, so I do have some of that, and they obviously have their reservations with basically any policy he does. But I think that what it is like, when does this end? And especially for people who are living, and I feel it too, is for people who are living on their retirement assets, which is a lot of people, or it's a part of it. They're obviously concerned, right? Because 10% pullback, that happens every year. I mean, since the beginning of time. But once you start cresting that 10% line, right, and get to that correction territory further towards the bear market, that starts to affect people's withdrawals. That starts to affect things that are significant. So their concern level and their tolerance level starts really fading rapidly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Are you a Trump supporter?
3-time voter.
Yeah, 3-time voter. And how do you feel about the policy?
So I guess I would say that I can be both at the same time. I give myself that leeway because my heart towards my clients is I really do not like the messaging, right, on that side, because it confuses the average American immeasurably, who doesn't even understand this at all anyway, right? By far, I think the best messenger has been Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary. He is the clearest and has the most level-headed, I guess, approach to it. Navarro scares people, and you would be surprised, especially with seniors, how many people watch the business news when the market goes down. I mean, their ratings must go like that, right?
They do.
And people like Ben Navarro just scare people. And I understand he's kind of your gruff, he's like the hardliner, and like they would talk about the old Soviet Union, guy sitting in the corner, like always angry, right? I think that
he's actually a lovely man, I should say.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure.
I'm not correcting. I'm just providing information. He's a lovely guy.
And I think I agree with a lot of the tariff maneuvering, right? I mean, I agree with it personally, but I think that people need to be careful. The administration needs to be careful on pushing on that. America isn't a pension-based retirement anymore, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Calvin, of all the things they say the policy's for, which ones do you agree with? In other words, you say you agree with it. What are you hoping it achieves?
I hope it achieves a fair, balanced trade, right? I mean, that's a significant one that I think it does. I agree 100% with the reshoring. Sumter, and I'm sure Hogan knows this, 30 years ago was the largest manufacturer of bedroom sets in the world, right? a Williams Furniture Company, Williams-Brice Stadium, where the Gamecocks play football. Their family paid for it, right? And they sold that company to Georgia Pacific, who then sold it to the Chinese. And the Chinese were like, "Oh, we're going to keep this plant open. It's going to be wonderful, right? We're just going to take some of your designs, and we want to prefab some of it in China." And trickle, 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 and then the plant closes, and thousands of people lose their jobs, right? And it devastated our county for a while until we've been lucky that we've had some manufacturing come back through. But I mean, it was hollowed out completely. And this whole region of South Carolina, the textile mills, the cotton, right, destroyed, right, in the last 20 years. So a lot of people, especially clients, older ones that worked in those industries here, are actually very pro-tariff, right, and probably have been for a while. And many of them here especially are Democratic voters, right? Very Democratic, and still vote locally Democrat. Some of them have moved nationally towards Republican voting, but locally they vote Democrat. And I can guarantee you they witnessed it firsthand, and they don't want to go get new education. So I think the reshoring is a big part. I guess the part I'm skeptical with, and I agree with Sarah, is I mean, I don't know if we're going to grow bananas, and I don't know if we're going to manufacture pencils. There was that Milton Friedman with the famous pencil thing, right? But to quote Elon Musk, who put that on his Twitter. But I do think that reshoring and manufacturing is part of that I think is good. And then nobody's talked about this on the program yet, at least that I remember watching, is the debt is the $9 trillion of debt that's financed at higher rates does probably need to be refinanced. So maybe forcing the Fed's hand a little bit might be a beneficial thing too for us.
Yep, all very interesting. Sarah, any questions for Calvin?
No, I think that's a great laydown. I guess the question is, how patient do you think your investors or your clients are? How, if they're watching CNBC all day, how nervous are they? What do they want? How quick do they need this to pivot? How patient?
Phrased another way, how many more days till they show up at your office with torches and pitchforks?
I have good people, Mark.
Okay.
But I would say that okay. So Americans are odd because we've had in 2020 you had a V-shape, right, recovery where the recession of 2020 lasted 23 days, I think what it was, and then the market had left recessionary levels, and then by August I think it completely recovered. So that kind of, and also no client remembers that. By the way, that's another interesting thing, not criticizing them, but people are very short-minded. And 2022 we had the bear market from inflation, right, that did actually kind of last throughout the year. So people forget that. I think people will give a little leeway, but again, that's what I said. If the market was to take some significant more dips, leeway is not there, especially for a man-made crisis, right?
Yeah.
Man-made crises are that the president can control with a tweet, right? Are harder to stomach.
Yep. Calvin, thank you. Grateful to you for coming
one
on.
thing before I let you go.
Yes, sir. Of course.
I don't know if anybody said this, but I thought about 10% tariff. You could call it the Trump tithe, right?
That's nice. Hogan's writing that one down. Yeah. Don't be surprised if Speaker Johnson tomorrow says, "Let's consider it the Trump tithe." Calvin, that's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Speaker Johnson will thank you. Bruce, come on in. Tell folks who don't know you live in Virginia, but tell folks who don't know we're in Virginia and what's on your mind about tariffs.
Yeah, I live in Leesburg, Virginia. Well, I'm a big supporter of Trump, big supporter of the tariffs, have been for a long time. When I was a Democrat, I supported the tariffs quite a bit, was very much against NAFTA and China entering the getting most favored nation status and so forth. I think one thing that I was trying to get this on the morning meeting, but one thing I think that people have not really been talking about, although Scott Bessent did in that interview with Tucker, that the market, I don't think that this turmoil in the market is all due to the tariffs. The markets, we've been hearing for the last 2 years about how the market is oversold, that the run up in the market has been Fed money printing and government spending, and that the Fed monetary printing goes all the way back dramatically from the 2008 financial crisis. But even before that, you can trace basically since the wall came down, the Fed has had an easy money policy. And that's what the big run up has been, because the real economy and the physical economy has continued to decline. And the issue here, I think, is that Trump, and the reason why I don't mind his messaging and some of the other stuff, because I think you got to take a tough line, because we're dealing with two problems: the physical economy and how do you unwind this money printing.
Yeah, Bruce, let's let Sarah critique your theory. Sarah.
Okay.
Synthesize it for me, Mark. I'm not sure I quite.
He's saying a correction was supposed to be coming anyway.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Spending and other things.
There were some things that were expensive, and particularly some of the kind of big seven stocks or whatever. I think this is, a correction that's probably beyond what was expected for 2025. I think it's clearly very responsive, as Mark was talking about. One false headline and the market goes. So I think it's very much trying to trade on this. The one thing that the market's super uncomfortable is that they don't know what the end game is. And maybe that's, Mark, to your point, what Secretary Bessent was trying to get through to the president. Everybody, you can price in an asset, you can price in an earnings, you can price in your own view on inflation, whatever that may be, but you can't price uncertainty, and the market hates it. And so I think that is what's driving a lot of this. And I think Bessent's right. If he could at least give us a strategy of what the end game looks like, I think there'd be more comfort.
Bruce, I think you're definitely right. Partially, I think the question is what percentage. I don't think anybody could tell you that.
The uncertainty that the Fed is not going to be able to do a bailout this time, like they did in 2007, 2008. Look, that really blew things up. People are talking about, well, we're worried about retirements and 401ks that are being hit by the market. But what about the retirements accounts and the savings of people who had to suffer for 15 years with getting 0.25% on their savings or something like that?
Yeah.
And the Fed was always there, even during this later period of the inflation, where the Fed was doing so-called quantitative tightening. The money supply was still growing. The bailouts were still going on. And that addiction, I think, is the uncertainty is the Fed's not going to be able to do that now. They can't. They've too much debt.
Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, no, I mean, I share a lot of critiques of how the government has responded to some of the crises of the last 20 years. For sure. I think and the Fed included, but I think here the Fed's in a challenging spot, partly because of the reasons you stated, and also because if they view this causing inflation and economic weakness, that's a very, very hard mix for them to address under any circumstances. So,
Bruce, thank you, Bruce. Hogan, 24 hours from now, what will the headline be on this story? Or 23 hours from now when I'm going on the air.
Trump makes deal with X country and
calming markets.
Calming markets, yes.
Yeah. All right, Sarah?
I don't know, man. He seems holding pretty strong to me, but the market wasn't down that much today. I don't know. I kind of think he's going to hold a little longer. But
all right, I'll go with Musk's fiery resignation over tariffs roils Trump White House, leaving Doge unled. Probably not.
You really think you think he'd resign over it?
No, I don't. I'm just kidding.
Very grateful. Might, but
very, very grateful to you both for bringing your expertise to this and walking folks through it. And hope you'll both come back on a regular basis soon when your other responsibilities allow. So thank you both.
I'm happy to.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks,
thank you, Hogan. Thank you. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, I'll be back here with Sean and Dan for the morning meeting. Then at 4 p.m. Eastern time, the Moynihan Report. Again, if you haven't sampled Michael Moynihan's program yet, I recommend it to you. Tomorrow, Michael's guest will be the staff writer from the Free Press, Olivia Reingold, talking about the cult of Luigi Mangione. Of course, the man accused of killing a healthcare executive here in Manhattan. Sponsored by our friends at FIRE. You won't want to miss this episode. Again, if you haven't sampled Michael's show yet, I urge you to give it a try. He's amazing. Moynihan Report, 4 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And then at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, guess what? I'll be back. I'm supposed to remember who my guests are. Lori, who's on tomorrow? I just can't remember. Who's on tomorrow night? Maybe Lori's left us. In any event, whoever it is, they'll be maybe not as good as Hogan and Sarah, but
I think we're still waiting on tomorrow. I think it's
okay.
either Wednesday and Thursday.
All right, that's why I didn't know. All right,
sorry.
That's
Selena
all right.
Zito will.
Selena Zito, okay.
Zito and
Selena.
Beverly Halpern.
All right, those are two awesome guests. They've both been here before, and they're awesome, and we look forward to that. I do. Hope you will too. Thank you for watching. I'll see you at 9 a.m. Eastern Time with Sean and Dan for the morning meeting. Have a good evening.